Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Jan's Beautiful Gallery here in Summerland, British Columbia. And today I'm going to talk about when a show and tell went horribly wrong, but we did create a beautiful prop. So I'll read you that part out of my book. It's about the movie The Edge. When I broke down the script for The Edge, I determined that one of the most important props was a knife. Because the knife was an important story point and would be used by Anthony Hopkins, every knife company in the world, okay, not every company, but close, sent sample knives, hoping they would be used. I set up a meeting with director Lee Tamahori in his office and laid out all the knives on a side table and his desk. When Lee came into the office, I started my presentation. When I was about halfway through, Lee stopped me and said, "This is great, Dean, but can you tell me, is that blood on my desk mine or yours?" "Well," I said without missing a beat, "if I don't want to lose my job, I hope it's mine." Sure enough, I had cut myself and had been unknowingly bleeding on the knives and his desk. A few minutes later, a bandage on and my confidence slightly bruised, I finished the presentation. Lee felt that the knife had to be special, so we agreed it should be custom made. A drawing was done, and once approved, it was my job to get it made. One of the best knife builders in the world lived about an hour southwest of Calgary. I knew that because he had built a few knives for Brad Pitt on Legends of the Fall. The knife maker looked at the drawing and agreed to our deadline. So I commissioned him to build 4 identical knives. 2 would be ready for the first day of filming, and the final 2 a few weeks later. I kept checking in with the knife maker to ensure that he would have 2 finished for the first week of filming. I would stop by his house on my way to the mountains at 7 p.m. the night before our 7 a.m. call time to pick up the first 2 knives. It was not ideal, but it was a tight deadline for him. When I arrived, the knives were in the final phase and they were beautiful, but the locking mechanism was bothering him. To me, they were just fine, but he was a fine jewelry level craftsman. So because his name was on the knives, he would not let them leave unless they were perfect. I sat and I sat some more watching this master craftsman finish my knives. Normally, I would be very excited at watching a master craftsman at work, but it was after midnight and I had to be on the mountain set at 6:30 a.m. The mind can play tricks when under pressure, and I started plotting whether I should knock him out and take at least one knife and make a run for it. That crazy thought passed as I watched him open and close the knives hundreds of times, saying, "It's still not perfect." Finally, at 3 a.m., he was happy enough to let me leave with him. I arrived at Crew Park at 4:30 a.m. and slept in my Jeep until 6 a.m. Then headed to the mountain, totally sleep deprived, to show Lee the knives. When I arrived on set, I got lots of praise for the knives, followed by the news that we would not use them that day after all. Great. I was so glad I got 90 minutes of quality sleep in a Jeep for a prop that was not needed for a day. Anyway, I'll show you the knife. This is the knife. Now, the difference with this knife is this is a one only knife, because in reality, the hero knives have mammoth ivory tusk on them. But because this knife was actually going to be used underwater for Anthony Hopkins to cut the seatbelt on the crash plane, spoiler alert, we had it painted. And the chlorine in the pool ate the paint off after the scene was done. It just faded over time. And the knife is an amazing piece of art. It was on the cover of Blade magazine. This is actually knife number 5. I said in the book we made 4, but in reality we made 5. And with this knife, it's a one only. There's no other one, because instead of a locking mechanism, I wanted to make it as safe as possible for Anthony under the water. So it's actually a slip lock. So real simple to use. Brian Little has passed away. But his knives were amazing, as was his shop. And in here, the quality of his work is, you can't see it, but he hand engraved in the slot the date the knife was made, the movie, and the words "one and only." Have a great day.